Testing. Hello. How's it going, everyone? Tonight, I'm going to brush my hair some and whisper and ramble softly. At least until my hair is dry and straight, or as straight as it gets anyway. And I guess this is like my first legitimate attempt at actual ASMR content. We'll see how it goes. Of course, it'll be available afterward for anyone to watch if no one happens to show up live. But yeah, I see we have a viewer. Hello. Feel free to say anything in chat. I'll be in chat too, probably. Although the clickety clack might be kind of annoying, so I'm gonna try to type really delicately. There we go. I should probably speak softer and... Uh-oh, is the stream frozen or something? Oh, it's buffering for me for a second. Weird. I should probably add occasional typing or something to the description. Hopefully the mouse isn't too loud. I was going to check and see if this showed up in my Facebook feed. No, it didn't. Okay. Well, that's kind of good because not everyone understands ASMR. I imagine most people might think it's weird. So, I should probably get started brushing my hair, which is also one of my favorite kinds of ASMR to watch, slash listen to, slash fall asleep to. So I figure maybe I'm not the only one. Plus, seems like female ASMR artists are more popular, but a lot of people say I have a nice voice and a soothing voice too, so maybe it's another way I could cultivate an audience somehow. So maybe when it says there's one person watching, what it means is I'm the one watching. That could be the case. That would explain it. Oh my, excuse me. Sorry about that. Excuse me. Looking for a way to share this stream. I don't see hyperlink anywhere. I'm guessing it didn't tweet out or anything. That might help. Okay, now I'm live. Why is this stream health yellow? Viewers may be experiencing minor issues. That's very strange. Copy video URL. Okay, maybe that'll do it. No, not that. Sorry, forgot I'm supposed to type delicately. Let me mute that. Okay, let me share this on, I guess, Twitter. Yeah. I guess that's going to end up on my Facebook as well. So we'll see. Yep, it did. It did end up on my Facebook too. Well, I guess I'll go ahead and get started. Enough prelude and preamble. I thought about turning on some soft music too. Like I was trying to figure out which album to go with. I don't know if you can even hear the hair. Maybe I should check by unmuting for a second. Trying to figure out which album to go with. I don't know if you can even hear the hair. Maybe I should check. It's quite a loud hum. I don't even know what's causing that hum. Oh, whoever was watching left. So I guess I wasn't the only one here. Huh. Wonder if there are any like ASMR Facebook groups. That's a good idea. ASMR community. I see. Huh. Okay, still no one here. And I'm sorry if you're watching this after the fact and you're disappointed that I'm not focusing on the ASMR aspect. My voice sounds like gravelier than usual, I guess. It's not complaining though, I guess. I sure do guess a lot. Oh, we have a viewer, apparently. Unless it's just me again and YouTube's confused as usual. Who knows? Feel free to speak up in chat if you have anything to suggest or recommend or anything. Sorry, needed a sip of water. You know how it is. At least I hope you do. If not, maybe you should drink more water. Yeah, I gotta work on that humming, I guess. Maybe if I switch my microphone's mode from like an all-encompassing one to more of a stereo mode, the binaural mode or whatever they call it, then the hum would be less pronounced. Maybe it would be in one ear instead of both or something. I'm curious to hear what this sounds like again, so one sec. Like an all-encompassing one to more of a stereo mode, the binaural mode or whatever they call it, then the hum would be less pronounced. Maybe it would be in one ear instead of both or something. I'm curious to hear what this sounds like again, so one sec. Sorry about that. Maybe if I do something like this, get that long USB cord out. Maybe the length of the USB cord is the problem. It has so much room to be interrupted. Let's see, the signal, I mean. Maybe it's not even the signal though, I don't know. Maybe the length of the USB cord is the problem. It has so much room to be interrupted. guess when I get that close to the microphone, my voice gets much louder than the signal, so maybe I should do that. Maybe. Pop my knuckles farther away, sorry about that. Scoot forward. There we go. One watching now. Huh. Maybe just for the heck of it, I'll put it on my Facebook. Hopefully no derision from that. We'll see. Maybe I could write this link on that page. Maybe I can get some views from that. We'll see. So far, this page seems to only be sharing from a couple channels. Still only one viewer. I guess back to hairbrushing shortly. Okay. I wonder how loud the clicking and stuff is. It's not too loud, I guess. Yeah, most of these ASMR Facebook pages are just pages devoted to specific ASMR channels. So, maybe Facebook is not the best place. It's been live for 12 minutes now, and I should probably try to sleep soon. Maybe in half an hour. We got another half hour. I was thinking about streaming games tonight too. We'll see. Maybe if I like hashtag the tweet, that'd be good. Copy video URL, paste and go. Okay, it's muted, that's good. Let's go to Twitter. I guess whoever is watching is still enjoying it. That's good. Oh, Facebook notification. Nope, still nothing. About this at least. Okay. There it is, right? Tweet. ASMR live stream podcast hair brushing. Oh man, back to 0. somebody's back, I guess. Maybe YouTube's just confused. Anyway. ASMR live stream, broadcast, hair brushing, audio, meal relaxation, sleep, rest, chill, chat. That's probably enough tags. Here we go. That might help. Let's check the ASMR hashtag. See what they do. Cracked.com posted. What did they post? What happened? Where'd it go? Refresh the Facebook. There we go. Search filters for advanced. Weird. Figured it would show like most recent tweets with that hashtag or something. Latest, there it is. 46, okay, there's a lot of tweets with that tag. Okay. Interesting. Alright, that's enough for now. Let's go back to hair brushing. Here comes my air conditioner. It's gonna make the humming louder, probably. Do you hear it breathing? Drop my comb. Alright. Maybe some music could help combat the humming, if that's alright. Let's go to this one. Let me know in chat what you think of this music. That's not the range. Too loud, sorry. That's probably a good one. Ah, very zen-like. Alright. Maybe too loud though. Excuse me. OBS says my stream is great. My stream is great, and YouTube says my stream is not so great. It says, what does it say? It says okay. Viewers may be experiencing minor issues. Hey, Douglas. How's it going? Do you like ASMR, I guess? Or is this just weird? I don't know. Ah, 2 viewers. Alright. Very cool. OP? What's that? Overpowered? Or original post / original poster? Or what's OP? The music's OP? The music's overpowering? Or the hair sound that I'm making by brushing my hair? Is that overpowering? Oh man. 2 viewers are gone back to 1. No, I like ASMR. Okay, cool. That's good. Have you been here long? Watching this stream, I mean? Music. The music's OP. Okay, I turned it down. About 5 minutes. Cool. Yeah, I'm trying to speak softer, I guess. Figure that's what ASMR is supposed to be. Oh, thank you. This is only my first or second ASMR-ish video, so all the rest is gaming and music related, for the most part. So maybe I'll keep doing this kind of thing. See if I can build a following, because a few people, more than a few people in fact, well, I don't know how to put this. Everybody compliments my voice, but only a few have specifically suggested ASMR, that I should try making ASMR. So I like ASMR, so I figure as much as it helps me relax and fall asleep, maybe I could provide that for someone else. So I was just afraid to, because it seems creepy to some people, I guess. Yeah, I do play the piano. Maybe that would be a fun ASMR-ish stream sometime. I have my keyboard right over here. Could play it, but that would not fit the theme of this stream. So, anyway, I was afraid to put myself out there and make ASMR because I have 5,000 Facebook friends, and a majority of them would think it makes me even creepier than they already think I am. So, I don't know. Hang on, that's too upbeat. Hang on. This album has a few good transcendental meditation tracks, but just a few. Maybe 2 tracks. that's a good one. Oops, sorry, I brought my knuckles right by the mic. This one's good ambient music. What system do you play on? Well, I recently built my first gaming PC, and my Steam library just hit 1,050 games. So I play on every system though, pretty much. I've got my PC with 1,000 games on Steam, and emulators naturally. I've got an Xbox One S, not an Xbox One X, not a Project Scorpio, but an Xbox One S. That was my last console purchase about a year ago. When did I get my PS4? I guess 3 years ago. I got a PS4, Glacier White, first generation. Pretty sure it's first generation. And that same year I got a Wii U, unfortunately. It's easier to go chronologically forwards rather than backwards, so I'm going to do that. I have a couple NESs, a couple SNESs, one N64 that I know of, GameCube, Wii, Wii U. Nice. Yeah, thank you. How about you? I could go on and on about all the games I play. But I used to have PS2s, have a PS3 and a PS4, Xbox 360, Xbox One. Those are the home consoles. Oh, right, Sega. I also have Sega Genesis, and Sega Dreamcast. And what else we got? Handhelds. We've got Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance SP, DS Fat, DS Lite, and 3DS XL. Multiple of those. We got a couple DS Fats, a couple DS Lites, and a couple 3DS XLs. In fact, this month I need to get my 3DS XL replaced because it's had a dead pixel since I got it. So it's a good thing I got a warranty on that. But yeah, I also play a lot of games on my iPhone 7 Plus, which I had an iPhone 5 for 4 years before I bought the 7 Plus a year ago. So it was time for an upgrade. GameCube, PS1, 2, 3, 4, N64, DS Fat, and PSP. Very cool. Yeah, I'm glad the Nintendo Switch is sort of taking up that PS Vita position in terms of, you know, being an indie on the go sort of thing. Being full fidelity, portably. Tekken, very nice. Of the fighting games, I'd have to pick Smash Brothers. Used to be my stuff. I used to be quite a smasher. And I'm not the same Nintendude that everybody knows as a Melee player. No, I'm a different Nintendude. Excuse me. But, yeah. Hopefully, wonder how loud that neck popping was. Hopefully, wonder how loud that neck popping was. It was kind of loud. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Oh, cool. I didn't know that Tekken was coming to iPhone. No, Tekken 7's coming soon, if it hasn't already come out. And, what else was I thinking about in terms of fighting games? I can't remember. Mario Kart? Dragon Ball Z? Oh, Mortal Kombat. Right. Fighting games. Yeah, I remember the good old N64 WWE games. Those were fun. There was something I was thinking of. Tekken, Smash Bros. Tekken for iPhone. Yeah, Mortal Kombat. My bad. I could probably find something relaxing on this album as well. That's a good one. Background piano right there. There was something. Gosh, it's Tekken for iPhone. Oh, I remember what I was gonna say. I think I was gonna say Rocket League is my recent competitive fix, if I didn't already say that. I think that's what I was forgetting to say. Rocket League? Sure. It's as good a time as any, although sometimes it goes on sale. And you might want to wait for that. Ooh, my stream's back to healthy. I don't know how that happened. Oh, it's back to unhealthy. Oh. What's my internet, I wonder? Oh, I opened Steam. Could that have anything to do with it? Spotify, maybe. Whoa, Google Chrome's got a lot of tabs open, I guess. Okay, back to healthy. Weird. Let's end that task. See if Steam closes and reopens then. Okay, there. Everything Steam is closed. And stream health video. Uh-oh, you're gonna experience buffering, it says. Potentially serious viewing issues. Okay. Don't know what is happening with my internet. As soon as I said healthy, it paused. I just saw that chat. Weird. Very weird. Okay. OBS says it's back to healthy. So it should recover shortly if you're patient enough. Come on, internet. Huh. Don't play this music. Okay, that was too hyper. Oh, okay. Now it says on now YouTube says it's back to okay. OBS still says healthy. Did it fix itself? Oh, okay, cool. Sorry, I just saw your chat. And then, now OBS says it's messing up again. So YouTube might go back down soon. I don't know. Maybe it has something to do with Steam borrowing so much internet. Excuse me. Oh, okay, good. It's already being throttled. New York Times news alert. Breaking news alert. Breaking news. North Korea carried out its 6th and most powerful nuclear test, claiming it had detonated a hydrogen bomb meant to be mounted on an ICBM. An intercontinental ballistic missile. Let's go read that article, I suppose. And maybe even share it on my Facebook or Twitter. Twitter it is. Facebook also. Oh, you got the same notification. Cool. North Korea carried out its 6th and most powerful nuclear test on Sunday, saying it had detonated a hydrogen bomb. No. Spotify. Bye. Spotify. Okay. Intercontinental ballistic missile. The test, which the North called a complete success, came hours after Pyongyang announced it had developed such a weapon. It was an extraordinary show of defiance by its leader, Kim Jong-un, against President Trump, who has threatened to bring fire and fury to the North if it continues to threaten the United States with nuclear missiles. But it was unclear whether the North had in fact tested a hydrogen bomb. A a far more powerful weapon than the atomic bombs it had tested in the past. A seismic tremor detected at 12:36 p.m., emanating from the Punggye-ri underground nuclear test site in northwestern North Korea, set off a scramble to determine whether the North had carried out another test. The South's military soon confirmed that it had. The United States Geological Survey estimated that the quake had a magnitude of 6.3. The South Korean Defense Ministry's estimate was much lower, at 5.7, but even that would mean a blast 5 to 6 times as powerful as the North's last nuclear test a year ago, said Lee Mi-soon, a senior analyst at the South Korean media lab. Spot a buy, trademark it? I meant spot a goodbye. You know, like adios, amigos. I was senior analyst at the South Korean Meteorological Administration. Just last week, North Korea fired a ballistic missile over Japan, sharply escalating tensions in the region. In July, Pyongyang launched an intercontinental ballistic missile capable of reaching the American mainland, and the North responded to Mr. Trump's fire and fury rhetoric by threatening to fire missiles into waters around Guam, the United States territory that is home to military bases. Oh, no, it's okay, Doug. Douglas. Can I call you Douglas? Earlier in the day, Mr. Abe and Mr. Trump had spoken by telephone and resolved to put pressure on North Korea. Oh, I skipped a paragraph. Japan's Foreign Minister Taro Kano said Japan had requested an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council. President Moon Jae-in of South Korea and Prime Minister Shinzo Abe of Japan called emergency meetings of their National Security Council. Earlier in the day, Mr. Abe and Mr. Trump had spoken by telephone and resolved to put more pressure on North Korea. North Korea has conducted a series of nuclear and ballistic missile tests since 2006. Its previous nuclear tests have produced increasingly larger blasts. The last test, in September 2016, yielded one about as powerful as the bomb the United States dropped on Hiroshima in 1945. In its fourth nuclear test, in January 2016, Why are they telling this out of chronological order? The last test in September 2016 yielded one about as powerful as the bomb the United States dropped on Hiroshima in 1945, and then it says, in its fourth nuclear test in January 2016, North Korea claimed to have used a hydrogen bomb. Other countries dismissed the claim for lack of evidence, but experts have said that the North may have tested a boosted atomic bomb, in which a small amount of thermonuclear fuel produced a slightly higher explosive yield, but fell well short of a true hydrogen bomb. Hours before the tremor was detected on Sunday, North Korea's state news agency said the country had developed a hydrogen bomb that could be mounted on an intercontinental. The guy that wrote that must be sleepy. Yeah, he made a couple other typos. He's also not a native English speaker, I don't think. It says by Cho Sang-hoon. So I'm guessing, maybe I'm a racist, but I'm guessing English is not their first language. Yeah, I forgot where the typo was earlier. It was where they forgot to say test site instead of just test. Scroll up. Let's see. Facebook notifications. Sam Brown likes a photo I shared. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good meme. Oh, well, I forgot to unmute the Spotify radio. Okay, back to YouTube for a sec. English is probably not his fist language, and that's like saying ATM machine. Meme king. Yeah. I am quite a meme king, if I do say so myself. Which I do, because I just did. Deal with it. Hashtag deal with it. Oh, sorry. I don't know if you like all the knuckle popping. Sorry. Ah, man. Oh, it's already bedtime, but I'll stay up a little later. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Let's pull up my Instagram to make this joke work. That'll work. It's ALR. What's that? First, DWI. It's ALR. Huh. What is ALR? It's 3:32 a.m. here. It is now 2:34 a.m. here. All right. I wonder what you were saying all right to. Oh, gotcha. DWIs, deal with it. Oh, okay. I thought it was driving while intoxicated. So many acronyms nowadays. I'm gonna need more water soon. Driving while intoxicated. Yeah. That's a good one. Good joke, I mean. Not a good habit. So, Sonic Mania, available now on PC. And I heard they patched out the Denuvo DRM. So, we'll see. Ooh, August 29th, the letter. Sega Dev says, in regards to DRM, quote, like you, we've noticed an error in the Steam store not mentioning the DRM for Sonic Mania. We're fixing that now. Sonic Mania is intended to be played offline, and we are investigating reports on that. We are also investigating other issues like controller support. These are all PC-specific things that Christian and the team have been working on these last few weeks. Please bear with us while we collate and investigate problems that are being brought to our attention. Okay. Sonic, yes, indeed. Do you play with a keyboard or a controller on PC? I still prefer a controller because I grew up with consoles, so. But when I played the Destiny 2 beta the other day, or a couple days ago, I did not like it. I played with a controller and I could just feel the aim assist, and I was like, this is boring and embarrassing. Destiny 2 beta. So, yeah, but in general, I still prefer a controller because it works for most games. Like Super Meat Boy is a great example of a game that even says when you boot it up, it says a controller isn't necessary, but neither is showering. Think about it. So, you've seen that on my channel. Seen Destiny? I played Destiny once or twice on my channel. Probably. What else have you seen on my channel? I liked the first Destiny. That was a couple years ago, probably, that video that you're talking about. But more than a couple years ago. Whew, man. Time flies, I guess. One sec. I gotta turn off this candle for one thing in this music. Oh, okay. Yeah. That's nice background music. Okay. The meme game coming in 2018. While I'm away from the mic, I'm just gonna turn the music up. So don't mind that. Feel free to turn it down until I return. So, be right back. Good timing. Okay. He's finally back to kick some tail. Huh. DK Donkey Kong. He's the leader of the bunch. You know him well. He's finally back to kick some tail. Okay. So, what are you up to lately? Okay. Back, by the way. Don't know if you're still there, but I might have to go soon. Or switch to games. I don't know. Would you watch me play a couple games real quick? If I started a new stream? South Park or Family Guy? Neither. I mean, I like both, I guess. I just haven't watched them. Yeah. You would? Okay. Hmm. Okay, cool. Let me close this Spotify. Okay. I'm just not gonna start a new stream. I'm just gonna switch to games on this one. So, yeah. Let me change the text, I guess. Also, video games. Sometimes. That's good. Here we go then. Let's play the Hyper game first. It's called Crypt of the Necrodancer. You may have heard of it, and I love it. It's one of my obsessions slash addictions. Let me put it over here. Whoa! Careful, computer. You're playing with fire. Okay. Hang on. Let's put this. Oh. Oh, hang on. What's going on here? You would. Okay. That's the last message. Okay, let's stretch this out over here. That's good. Let's put this down here so we can see your chat. Excuse me. Excuse me. There it is, okay. I'm still playing with my hair a little bit. I guess I can warm up a little tonight. And then we'll do the daily challenge. Then we'll play a different game. Whoops, dumb move. Sorry, I'm not singing or talking very much tonight. I'm just keeping an eye on the chat and focusing on the game as well. In fact, I wonder if there's a graphical option for borderless window. Actually, I can't do that because OBS has a setting that I'm using. So, man. Purchase a random item. I like my weapon. Let's go with armor. That'll work. Whoops. I forgot I had a shovel. It's pretty cool. Yeah, I like this game. Very much. Oh, shnikes! It's a dragon! Fuck. I'm dead. Alright, that was warm-up. Just to give you an idea what the game is like. So, options. Change soundtrack. We have the original soundtrack by Danny B. Is this for PC only? No. It's also on PlayStation and Xbox One and iPhone and iPad and Apple TV. It was recently on sale for $3 on PlayStation, I think, or maybe on PC too. That's the lowest price ever, so I would recommend waiting till it's $4 or $3. But I got it for $7.50 one Christmas, and it's normally $15, I think. I also, by the way, as an aside, I make Steam Workshop mods for the game. So I was about to explain it. I was about to get to explaining that. So we've got the Danny B original soundtrack. What is it called? It's Crypt of the Necrodancer. The original Danny B soundtrack, the dubstep remixes, or EDM remixes by A-Rival, metal, rock, guitar remixes by Family Jewels, Vert did a 90s video game retro cover sort of thing, Girlfriend Records did 80s synthwave stuff, OC Remix made sort of dancey versions, it's kind of cool, I don't know what else to describe it as, electronica, techno. Chipsel did Chipstep, it's the best description of her genre. And there's also a Japan-only Danganronpa OST that you can dance to. So, or you can just random, which plays everything except for the Danganronpa soundtrack, since it's not the same. And since all these other soundtracks are the same compositions and tempos and keys and melodies, I layered the first 5 together into a mod called the Family Madness Mashup mod. It sounds like this. So that's the original soundtrack, dubstep, metal, 90s vert thing, and 80s synthwave, all together, playing the same song. And here's what that sounds like in the game. We'll go. Make sure I got the soundtrack on. Okay. A-Rival. Here goes. Daily challenge. I need a drink before we get started. Daily challenge. Complete all zones in one run. All players in the world get the same dungeon. Resets daily at midnight GMT. Continue. Yay, more bombs! Yay, a treasure! Oh no, I hate those sunglasses. Alright. Well, so much for that idea. I lost the daily challenge, but while we're here, I'm going to show you the hardest mode in the game. There's so many characters and modes you can play with, by the way. And soundtracks and all kinds of stuff. So, here's Arya. Arya mode, dagger only, which means you can never get any other weapons. So you get the weakest weapon, in other words. Die in a single hit. Also, die on a missed beat. Sorry. What kind of weapon are you using? I was using a dagger in the previous run, which is the default for most of the characters. So, I'm going to leave the soundtrack on random, because I'm going to be dying a lot. I just want to show you the hardest mode. Also, another twist it doesn't mention. You start at the end of the game, and work your way from the hardest levels to the easiest levels. So, that makes it even harder. What? Well, that was quick. Relatively. Whoops. I'm not very awake right now. That explains why I'm doing so poorly. Yeah, the fact that it's the hardest mode doesn't help, but... got trapped. Finally, we make it to level 2. Woo! Man. It's addicting, too. You feel so challenged, you don't want to give up. Ah! That works, I guess. God, I hate the crown of teleportation. Why did I pick that up? Oh, bats. What? Oh, cool. I hope you enjoy it. You're on Steam, right? You should check out my mods on the workshop. Oh, on iPhone. Very nice, very nice. It's only like $5, right? Something like that. This level isn't in the iPhone version yet. This is a DLC level. Which is fine. Ah, shit. Damn it. That's what I get for trying to talk. Hello, Earth Dragon. How are you? Cool. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you next time. It was nice meeting you. But in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. And good luck. And sweetest dreaming, whether awake or sleep. Nighty-night.
Yeah, I'm gonna go for now too, I think. Well, I'll go ahead and check out the Mini Metro Daily Challenge as well, in case anyone else decides to show up. Let's see, what do we got here? Mini Metro, then. All right. Nice meeting you too. Hope to see you again next time. No, did not mean to do that. I wanted to connect those. Excuse me. Okay. While it's on pause, I'm gonna go put something in another tab. Let me close this tab. I'm gonna watch what I was watching before the stream on the other screen. Hang on, I got Facebook notifications. Huh. Ha ha ha. Okay.
And your neighbor has the degree of inequality more than they are the absolute level of well-being that they have. And there's a very good, it's tragic, but a very good evolutionary reason for this, which is if you are working on some piece of land and your neighbor has the adjacent piece of land and they're doing twice as well as you, it's because they know something you don't. Right? And so becoming focused on what they're doing that you're not doing is a rational thing to spend your
Be stat, I think I told you this once before. It's illegal to induct anyone into the armed forces if they have an IQ of less than 83. And the reason for that is the armed forces, despite having every reason to draw the contradictory conclusion, has decided that there isn't a single thing that you can be trained to do in the military if you have an IQ of less than 83 that isn't positively counterproductive. That's 10% of the population. And we're producing a culture that's very cognitively complex. Like, what the hell are you going to do if you can't use a computer? Like, if you can use a computer, you're at least in the game. If you can really use one, you're hyper powerful. If you're not literate enough to use a computer, you're at zero. 10% of the population. The conservatives say, well, there's a job for everyone if they just worked hard enough. It's like, no, and increasingly no. And the liberals say, well, everyone's basically the same and you can train anyone to do anything. It's like, no, you can't.
I want to go back to the inequality point here, because if you look at this biologically, actually, I think it reveals a lot. Why are we, I mean, we know from careful study that people are motivated by the degree of inequality more than they are the absolute level of well-being that they have. And there's a very good, it's tragic, but a very good evolutionary reason for this, which is if you are working on some piece of land and your neighbor has the adjacent piece of land and they're doing twice as well as you, it's because they know something you don't, right? And so becoming focused on what they're doing that you're not doing is a rational thing to spend your time on, so you can figure out what it is that they know that you don't. In the modern environment, this is a catastrophe, because who are your neighbors? Well, you've got some box sitting on the wall of your living room that has a totally artificial portrait of other people who may be much wealthier than you, and it's broadcasting in as if you're looking in their window, right, in the adjacent house. And so you think, you're being triggered to think that you're doing something wrong that you might fix, when in fact the solution may not be, first of all, the person on the other side of that screen may not be for real, but even if they are, they're not living in the same environment as you. The technology is interfacing with our brains badly. But so we have the perception of massive inequality. Economically, we do have massive inequality. You're arguing that the solution to this involves some sort of massive redistribution.
Well, as solution. I would argue, but yeah.
But nonetheless, redistribution is wildly unpopular for various reasons. And so what we've got now is a situation, this is speculative, but what's really happening is that austerity is being used as a threat to keep people who would otherwise rebel against the inequality in line. And my fear about this is that this is exactly the conditions that are going to trigger that tribal population against population mayhem that we were talking about at the beginning of this conversation. That when people have the sense that the burst of growth that they were experiencing is now over, the natural response is to turn on those who are not as powerful and take their stuff. That this is a totally indefensible but nonetheless biological pattern of history, and that if we want to avoid that, we have to stop sending the signals that trigger us to imagine that we've just run to the limit of the opportunity that we had discovered, and it is now time to look and see who can't defend their position.
How are we sending these signals?
Well, by basically failing to provide enough well-being that people's perception of the inequality is reduced to a tolerable level.
That's the argument for universal basic income, right?
It's certainly a strong one, and
it's also a good argument for equality of opportunity, right? Because people are actually not as resentful about the success of others as you might expect. They're resentful about it if they feel that the game is fixed, but they're also willing to consider the game long term. So lots of people will say, look, like, I'm stuck at not 0, I'm stuck at 1, but my kids might make it to 4, and that's good enough. And that's been the American dream, right? And that's a really high power antidote to inequality. It's like, well, yeah, there's some inequality. We need it to keep the generative mechanism going, but the game is fair and you can play it too, and there's some reasonable probability that either you or someone you love will be successful. So so it has to be a straight game, and that's why ethics is so important to keep this landscape stable. People can't play crooked games, and the rich shouldn't be fixing the game if they want to hold on to their money. And the problem is that some of them, although not all, some of them are fixing the game, and no one's happy about that, and no wonder, and I guess that was evidenced to some degree by the 2008 collapse, because it seemed, and I'm just as uninformed as the next person, so I'm capable of commenting on this. It seems from the outside that the rich disproportionately benefited from the restabilization of the economic system. And people are not happy about that, and they shouldn't be happy about that, because it indicates that there's something fundamentally rotten about the game. So you could say, well, maybe people can tolerate necessary inequality if the game isn't rigged. And so that's why everybody has to act in a manner that indicates that the game isn't rigged. And that means they can't rig it. That's really what it means. So we're also being driven into this inequality corner by, I would say, by the postmodernists and the neo-Marxists, because they say, this is the pernicious thing, they say, well, the reason that some people have more than others is because every hierarchy is based on arbitrary power, and they're all oppressors. And the reason they have the money is because they stole it from you. And there's some truth in that, because there are some criminals. But when you get to the point where you fail to distinguish the productive people from the criminals, which is exactly what happened in the 1920s in the Soviet Union, you better bloody well watch out, because when you radically make things egalitarian, you're going to wipe out all your productive people, and then you're going to starve. And so that's one of the doomed end scenarios that awaits us if this idiot process of polarization continues. And what I find reprehensible about the universities, and you're tangled up right up to your neck in this, is that the universities are actively agitating to produce people who believe that all inequality is due to oppression and power. And that's just, well, first of all, it's technically wrong. But
why
it's
is that,
dangerous.
though? You guys both operate in that system, so what?
Well, here's the problem. As far as I know, nobody has properly studied the question of what fraction of the economy is actually crooked, rent-seeking, right? Not productive. And I fear that the answer to that question is that it's an awful large fraction of the economy, not because of some conspiracy, but because opportunity is finite, but con games aren't. And so anybody who can find a mechanism for transferring wealth from somebody else for doing nothing finds that mechanism, and that thing is ever present, whereas discovering the next big thing that's actually productive is, something that goes along and fits and starts. And so if we were, really, you've described it very well. We've got a battle between two caricatures of what's true, right? Either the market is wonderful and it's producing great stuff with very little corruption, or everything that makes people unequal is the result of corruption. Both of these things are wrong, right? Markets are marvelous engines for figuring out how to do something really well. They're brilliant at this, right? And so people who see that fall in love with it, understandably, because they're so good at it. But what they're terrible at is telling you what you should want or what you should do, right? If people tell markets, here's what we would like to accomplish, and then the markets tell us, well, how do we accomplish that best? That would be a very viable system that would not result in massive rent-seeking, resulting in everybody feeling that all of their misfortunes are the result of a rigged game, which is so massively rigged that when they check, they see, yes, that is actually to a large extent what we're suffering from. But they want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, and so they want to throw out markets entirely, which, would be a terrible mistake.
You asked, Joe, why this has happened in the universities, and like that, I think it's one of these runaway positive feedback processes. The universities start to tilt hard to the left in the 60s, and that just went out of control. And now we're at the point where that's the dominant force. And why is probably another manifestation of one of these Pareto principles. It was like, well, at some point there's enough lefties hired so that the probability that they're only going to hire people equally as left or greater starts to reach 100%. And then you iterate that across a couple of generations and you get no conservatives, which is more or less the situation, say, in the humanities and most of the social sciences. And it sort of looks like a conspiracy, but it doesn't mean that anyone is actually planning it, although there are conscious attempts also to silence conservative voices, let's say. And then that's also driven by this postmodern ethos, neo-Marxist ethos, I would say, that says that all of the right, the moral right, is on the side of the left. And so it's the combination of those two things. There's more things. I often think comically that if you paid sociology professors 3 times as much, the probability that they would be anti-capitalist would decline precipitously. Like, I think a lot of it's driven, because there's a lot of smart people in academia, and they're underpaid relative to their intelligence. So, and that doesn't make them happy, so they get bitter and resentful about that, and they think, well, there's these goddamn bankers who are hauling in $20 million a year, and here I am, hardly struggling, but here I am struggling comparatively, and that's the issue, is comparatively on $100,000 a year, $120,000 a year. You know, I look at that and I think, well, whatever. It doesn't matter. But there's like, my colleagues are often angry with me because I do work with the business school. You know, and I also have a business. I'm not anti-capitalist in the least. But it's just dumbfounding to me, because they'll come up to me and say, well, are you so sure that you should be working with the business school? And I think, what bloody planet are you from to posit a question like that? All businessmen are evil. It's like, really? That's the level of your sophistication?
This is really an argument that's been presented to you, that businessmen are evil?
Well, they don't come out and say that, but they certainly question my motivations, for example, in forming ties with the business school.
Like, what do they say about it?
They say exactly that. They question my ethics about forming ties with the business school. So,
But they don't give you any reasons for...
You're supposed to, the reason's supposed to be self-evident, Joe.
Oh, okay.
You know,
Well, so let's give this argument its due. I mean, I don't buy this argument, but nonetheless, let's not caricature it.
yes, that's good.
In an absolutely free market, which is not what we have, but we have something that tends in that direction. In an absolutely free market, if you
Excuse me. I'll be right back. Oh, sorry if that was loud. I'm gonna go find out. I'll be right back. Oh, sorry if that was loud. I'm gonna go find out. Okay. Now I will be right back. Oops. There we go. And we're back with more from the Hunter Short Stack. Okay. Here's my mouse, Mr. Jangles. Okay. Back to the games. Actually, I lost many metros, so I guess back to the live stream, or the show I was watching. And combing hair and eating cookies at the same time. Huh. Hot. Oops, what did I drop? Okay.
In ethics about forming ties with the business school. So,
And, but they don't give you any reasons for.
you're supposed to. The reason's supposed to be self-evident, Joe.
Oh,
You know,
Well,
it's,
so let's give this argument its due. I mean, I don't buy this argument, but nonetheless, let's not caricature it.
yes, that's good.
In an absolutely free market, which is not what we have, but we have something that tends in that direction. In an absolutely free market, if you compete two individuals, one of whom is completely amoral, will embrace any opportunity if it makes a profit, no matter the free market, which is not what we have, but we have something that tends in that direction. In an absolutely free market, if you compete two individuals, one of whom is completely amoral, will embrace any opportunity if it makes a profit, no matter what it is, and the other individual has some limit to what they will do, well, then there's no question who wins. If we give this experiment a long enough period, the individual who will do anything will outcompete the individual with moral limits, because
Doesn't it depend on what the game is, though? Because
No.
if people find out. That you have. No moral.
enough period, the individual who will do anything will outcompete the individual with moral limits, because
Doesn't it depend on what the game is, though? Because
No.
if people find out that you have no moral limits, then they're going to remove themselves from your market.
unfortunately not. And
No?
here's the. I know it seems like that, and in any given round, that's true.
Okay.
But to the extent that what you're saying is, to the extent that people police their purchasing, and they will stop using Uber if Uber is ethically compromised, for
Right.
example. Well, then the point is, well, what's the game? The game is to figure out which things are being monitored and not do any of the unethical things that are being monitored, but to do all of the unethical things that aren't being monitored. And so the individual who is perceiving which things they can get away with has an advantage.
That's
And-
the psychopath advantage, right?
Well, I don't need. Being monitored, that people police their purchasing, and they will stop using Uber if Uber is ethically compromised, for
Right.
example. Well, then the point is, well, what's the game? The game is to figure out which things are being monitored and not do any of the unethical things that are being monitored, but to do all of the unethical things that aren't being monitored. And so the individual who is perceiving which things they can get away with has an advantage.
That's
And-
the psychopath advantage, right?
Well, I don't even want to call it the psychopath advantage, right? What this is that a market will train you to do this if it is unregulated. And the best that the ethically restrained person can do is compete dead even. They have no way of getting ahead because the person that is completely free, the amoral business actor, has the ability to do anything that the constrained actor has.
Doesn't this depend entirely upon what the battlefield is?
Not really. There's sort of one exception, and that exception is people who have done something that has suddenly put them in a powerful position, right? So,
Like tech people.
Right, tech people who have skyrocketed as a result of having innovated the next big thing
Right.
have not been through the markets training them to discover the landscape of what isn't being monitored that you can make a profit at.
That's one of the fascinating things about tech people in general, is that these gigantic tech corporations almost all lean left.
Well, the gigantic tech
General is that these gigantic tech corporations almost all lean left.
Well, the gigantic tech corporations lean left. That's true. On the other hand, I mean, I hate to say it, but think about how Google started, right? Don't be evil.
Right,
I think they actually meant that,
right.
right? And the thing is, don't be evil is what it sounds like when you haven't been trained by the market to have to do whatever you have to do to beat your competition. You've just come up with the great search engine and suddenly you're on top of the world. But over time, what happens? That entity is now exposed to competition from a bunch of other entities that increasingly will find an advantage in being freer to do ethically questionable stuff. And so what it does is it forces an entity like Google to evolve in the direction of amorality. So now, don't
Kind
be
of happened
evil.
with China and Google. You know,
Yeah.
Because Google wanted to expand into China, and so they had to make a deal with the devil, so to speak.
Right, and
They had to accept censorship.
they will find ways to rationalize everything, because to not rationalize that which their competitors can avail themselves of would be to perish. And
One
so,
of the issues was there was all sorts of fake Google going on, just like they have fake Apple stores in China. They don't have the same sort of copyright laws that we have.
Hello, viewer. Excuse me. Just enjoying those cookies, along with some pretzel chips. That was actually surprisingly a good combination. I wish I had more cookie. Might have to pour some more milk and settle for, I don't know, chocolate or syrup or something. My sweet tooth has not been satiated just yet. Surprised my voice sounds this good still, though. If you're Paul or Alejandra, hello. I'm listening to that interview between Jordan Peterson and Brett Weinstein, mediated by Joe Rogan, on the Joe Rogan Experience. Excuse me, princess. I'm gonna be right back. But before I do, I would like to leave you with some music in the background. If I can find a good background tune. Let's do this one. That'll work. Feel free to say something in chat if you're still out there. This stream's been live for 2 hours now. It started out as an ASMR stream, which may or may not have been a good idea. But, yeah, I guess there have been a lot of ASMRs in this video on accident. Like all these knuckle poppings you hear that I do, and I did some actual hair brushing earlier. I did some eating just now. Probably heard some of that on the mic. There were some video games earlier. There's some soft-spoken rambling and chatting and stuff that became less soft-spoken whenever we were actually chatting. Because I get excited about video games, you know me, when we're talking about video games. So, yeah. What else happened on this stream that would be considered ASMR? I can't remember. I'll be right back, though. Don't you worry. I'll return shortly. Hang on, I have a better background song. Just a second. Sorry about all the clanking from my plate against the microphone. Hopefully that's not too jarring. Sorry about that. That's nice. It's a good old wall of sound. Alright. I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Oh, you're still here. Very nice. Thank you for waiting. Hopefully you didn't mind the music. Hopefully I'm not missing any chats. Okay. Hold on. Turn the music back down now. Pick a different tune for a moment. Excuse me. Okay. It appears that I'm not missing any chats, alright. Okay. Now I can pause the music. Well, I'll leave it on for a sec. I gotta check Facebook real quick. Let me turn it back up. As nice as that song is, and as nice as my singing hopefully is, we must carry on with this Joe Rogan conversation.
Yeah.
Because Google wanted to expand into China, and so, you know, they had to make a deal with the devil, so to speak.
Right, and they
They
will.
had to accept censorship.
they will find ways to rationalize everything, because to not rationalize that which their competitors can avail themselves of would be to perish.
And one of the issues was there was all sorts of fake Google going on, just like they have fake Apple stores in China. They don't have the same sort of copyright laws that we have, and you can essentially plagiarize anything you want.
Brett, you also said that I shouldn't make a straw man of the anti-business argument of my peers, and there's another way that I shouldn't make a straw man of it. Like, despite the fact that I'm not anti-capitalist, I don't believe that every entity is a business either. And one of the things that has happened to universities that has actually, they've pathologized in a number of dimensions, but they've also pathologized along the business dimension as the administrators have become increasingly trained or drawn from the ranks of business managers. Because a university is actually not a business. It's like a church isn't a business. There are organizations that aren't businesses that you can't just cram into the free market structure willy-nilly. And so my colleagues also object to the transformation of the university into a business entity run by profit-seeking MBAs. And they should object to that, because that's not what the institution is for. So there are reasons for them to be skeptical, say, of my association with the business school, that aren't merely a reflection of a simplistic anti-capitalist ideology.
Oh, there are lots of things that have no immunity to contact with the market, right? What has happened to the university system is that markets have pushed it in all kinds of directions that are not healthy. For the mission, have no immunity to contact with the market, right? What has happened to the university system is that markets have pushed it in all kinds of directions that are not healthy for the mission of the academy. And this is also true, journalism isn't well done in a market either, right? And this is also true, journalism isn't well done in a market either, right? Journalism done in a market ends up telling you what you want to hear, not what you need to know.
Right.
So anyway, markets are wonderful, but there's certain things they shouldn't be allowed to touch, and there are certain things that they shouldn't do, like tell us what to want, right? There's no magic principle by which a market knows what's healthy and what you might crave but shouldn't have.
Well, that also then brings us back to another part of the conservative, liberal left dilemma, which is, to direct the market means to impose the heavy hand of the state and its potential pathologies on the market, but to leave it alone completely means that it wanders randomly through an indeterminate landscape. And I guess part of the issue there too is it's sort of like, well, how do we properly balance foresight and planning, which you'd think would have some role in the construction of large-scale states? It's like, well, what do we want the landscape to look like? How do we balance that with the sort of comprehensive computations that the market allows? And of course, the answer to that is we have political discussions about it all the time that are untrammeled, so that we can adjust the ratio between those two things as necessary. So again, that's a argument on the side of free speech, right?
Yeah, really, it couldn't be more important. The real answer is that both failures are frightening.
Right.
You really don't want a state nannying you and overregulating the market. Don't want a state nannying you and overregulating the market and taking the magic out of it. And you don't want the completely unregulated landscape where the market, starts probing the minds of your children and figuring out how to sell them things that they don't have any ability to resist, right? You need to figure out what that path is, and it's not easy, but you can't do it in a landscape where you can't talk about the questions.
And this brings us to censorship, doesn't it? Because this is a real issue with the marketplace of free ideas. When you're talking about whether it's Google or YouTube or whoever might be imposing their own morality and their own ideas on what you should and should not be able to discuss and what should and should not be monetized, you're essentially imposing these limits. Look, I've read once, and it's a very good point, that talking about whether it's Google or
Marketscape where you can't talk about the questions.
and this brings us to censorship, doesn't it? Because this is a real issue with the marketplace of free ideas. When you're talking about whether it's Google or YouTube or whoever might be imposing their own morality and their own ideas on what you should and should not be able to discuss and what should and should not be monetized, you're essentially imposing these limits. Look, I've read once, and it's a very good point, that freedom breeds inequality, because you're free to put as much effort as you'd like into something, and you're going to get unequal results. And that if you are truly free in a free world, some people are going to do far better than others, and just based on their own input, just based on their effort, just based on the amount of focus and dedication they have. It is very unequal. You know, I know many people that are far more dedicated than other people that I know, and they do better.
Yeah, well, that's well buttressed by the empirical literature.
Yes.
Because, well, I mentioned earlier that the two best predictors of long-term success are intelligence and conscientiousness. And what intelligence is probably something like the number of credible operations that you can manifest in a given period of time. It's something like speed. Now, it's not only that, but speed's a big part of it. So if what you're doing is working and you can do it faster, that works better. Okay, that's pretty damn straightforward. And the next thing is, well, conscientiousness. Well, conscientiousness would be something like how many of those cycles of effort are devoted to that specific task. And it turns out that if there's a relationship between the effort and task success, more effort is better. And so I can give you some indication of the power of that. So if you have good measures of conscientiousness and IQ, you can predict someone's success in the competitive landscape with a correlation of about 0.6. And what that would mean is, imagine that you tried to pick people, you just said randomly you're going to be a success in the top half of the successful people, say, and you're going to be in the bottom half. You'd have a 50% chance of making that selection correctly if you did it randomly. If you did it informed by the results of a good cognitive test and a conscientious test, you'd be right 85% of the time. So you could say with 85% accuracy, which of two people would be more likely to be in the top 50%. So it's a whopping effect, and it's actually some validation for the essential integrity of our system, because we hope, given that it's essentially an open meritocracy, that smarter, hardworking people would do better, and they do. Now, other factors apply. Corruption, for example.
Lots of factors apply. I mean, for one thing, wrapped up in IQ is a big question, which is how much of the differences in IQ that exist is democratizable. That is to say, how much of this is the result of environments that aren't enriching, or there's lead in the water, or who knows what.
Not enough vitamins.
Right. My sense, actually, my intuition based on what I know biologically, is that a huge fraction, maybe all of it, but a huge fraction of differences in IQ is actually, could be generalized, and that's part of equal opportunity. It's not an equal opportunity.
See, I'm way more pessimistic about that, and that's partly because, I mean, maybe because I spend a lot of, because I'm interested in the amelioration of differences, you know. So for example, that's why I built this future authoring program. It's like, hey, if we can figure out how to make people more effective, well, let's do it. So I scoured the literature on IQ enhancement, and it's bloody dismal, man. Well, it's rough. It's very, very difficult to put together a cognitive training program. Like, some things have worked in a major way. Like the fact that people aren't starving has moved the bottom of the IQ distribution way up over the last 100 years. That's been like a walloping success. But a lot of the things that we hoped would work, like Head Start's a good example of that. You know, Head Start was part of the American War on Poverty, and the idea was you'd give, you know, deprived kids a leg up early before they hit school, and start training them cognitively earlier. And the hope was that you'd get a Pareto thing going, where they'd be a little smarter in kindergarten, and then they do a little better in grade 1, and that would make them do even more better in grade 2, do better in grade 2. But what happened was that the kids who went through Head Start actually did get a cognitive jump on their competitors, but all the other kids caught up by grade 6. And by grade 6, there was absolutely no effect whatsoever of the training program left. Now, Head Start did have a couple of benefits. One was fewer teenage pregnancies and fewer dropouts. But that was probably because the kids who got into Head Start were either socialized better, or that some fraction of them were removed for some time from extremely toxic environments just while they happened to be at Head Start. But it didn't produce the cognitive improvements that everyone, right and left, were equally hoping for.
Yeah, but this is in some sense, it's a very much an uncontrolled experiment, right?
Absolutely.
Because A, Head Start starts late.
Yep.
And B, it doesn't insulate you from all of the stuff that comes along with growing up in the deprived neighborhood. And so,
absolutely.
Anyway,
and they're also
we really don't know what the truth is of human IQ, and there are some results that suggest some things that are not hopeful. On the other hand, some of them just simply run afoul with the biological realities of intelligence.
Well, here's a good example of the lack of malleability. I mean, there's a couple of things. The first is that we may already be at a point of diminishing returns in terms of eliminating individual differences in IQ, because everyone has central heating, everyone has air conditioning, everyone has enough food, everyone has access to an infinite pool of information. So you could say even if you're in a deprived environment, but you're smart, the intellectual landscape is wide open to you. Now, I'm not saying that's the case, but you can make a case for that. But the more dismal end of the biological research on IQ shows things like, if you take identical twins at birth and you put them in adopted out families, that the IQ of the adopted out twins is much closer.
Be back one more time. Excuse me. Okay. Well, I'm back.
Hello.
Perfect timing, really. Okay, whoa, sorry if that's loud. Okay. Now the mic goes right back up in my face again. Let's go see what that sounded like. Perfect timing, really. Okay, whoa, sorry if that's loud. Okay. Now the mic goes right back up in my face again. Sound okay, I guess. Okay.
But the more dismal end of the biological research on IQ, big pool of information. So you can say even if you're in a deprived environment, but you're smart, the intellectual landscape is wide open to you. Now, I'm not saying that's the case, but you can make a case for that. But the more dismal end of the biological research on IQ shows things like if you take identical twins at birth and you put them in adopted out families, that the IQ of the adopted out twins is much closer A to the original biological parents than to the adoptive parents, and B almost perfectly correlated with one another, and that correlation increases as the separated twins age. So let's say you had a twin, you were both adopted out at birth. We test your IQs at 4. They're fairly close. They're closer to your biological parents than your adoptive parents. But then we test you every year until you're 60. By the time you're 60, no matter how long you've been separated as an identical twin, your IQ score is so much like your twin's IQ score that it's as if the same person was being tested twice. And that's a really complicated one, because you think, well, as twins travel through the environment and accrue different experiences, their IQs should diverge. Like, obviously. That's not what happens. They converge.
So there are a lot of places to critique that. For one thing, there aren't very many identical twins raised apart. It's a small sample.
This is definitely true.
Those identical twins raised apart carry with them whatever effects there were from before they were born. For
sure,
example.
and they look the same.
And so if they've been damaged by an environment that was unhealthy for their mother when she was pregnant, then they would carry that through, and it would show up as a similar IQ later in life. So that one really wants to see that this is true on the positive side, not just the negative side. So anyway, I'm not saying that there's nothing to it. I'm really saying I think we don't know. It's very early in this. But what I can say, and I think a couple of the things that we've settled on in this conversation already, are that an environment in which we can say anything, that we can advance any argument and test it. It doesn't mean that that argument is protected, but that any argument can be advanced and then challenged, that is inherent to navigating. And the other thing that I think we would agree on is that equality of opportunity is nothing but good.
Right, a fair game with equality of opportunity.
Fair
right.
game with equality of opportunity. And I guess one thing I would add, I don't know if we would agree on this, but you were talking about the fact that, I forget which thing exactly, but that a system based on merit produces inequality, because people will...
Freedom.
Yeah, that freedom produces inequality. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it doesn't mean that we are obligated to ride it all the way down. Right? The fact is, we could make people safe to fail, right? So that you are encouraged to attempt to do something highly valuable, and if it doesn't work out, then the point is you're not homeless.
This would be the argument for something like universal basic income, that
Right.
your needs are taken care of, your food, your shelter, and now you're free to pursue any ideas that you might have that you would ordinarily be saddled down by your issues with food and...
Well, there is some evidence of that actually happening in Canada. Now, these are multi-variable problems, and so I'm not claiming that this is true, but it's suggestive. The rate of entrepreneurial activity in Canada is actually higher than in the United States. And one reason for that appears to be the fact that if you're 25, 27, let's say, and you have a family, you could quit your job and start a startup and you don't lose your health care. Right? And so now, you know, the issue of universal health care is obviously a very thorny one, and it's not like the Canadian system works perfectly, but it doesn't work too badly, and we've been able to manage it for about 50 years. You know, we have, there's artificial scarcity in the system, and the delay times are longer than they would be if you flew to the Mayo Clinic and bought your health care. Like, I would say that at the high end, the American healthcare system is better than the Canadian healthcare system. But I would say at the middle and at the low end, the Canadian healthcare system is clearly preferable, and it's also cheaper, which is quite interesting, because you would expect, especially if you're a free market type, that, you know, I know the healthcare system in the US is not precisely free market, but it is more so than it is in Canada, yet Americans pay a substantially higher proportion of their overall, devote a higher proportion of their overall GDP to personal health care than Canadians do. And the stats are similar if you look at other, you know, quasi-socialized medical
There's a
systems.
great piece on that by Adam Ruins Everything. Have you ever seen that television show? It's really interesting. He breaks down pretty much a lot of different subjects, but breaks down the American healthcare system to pretty much where it went wrong. And I just encourage anybody to go watch it, because it just shows how they elevated the price of all sorts of different things to try to make up for, you know, lack of profits. And it's a really fascinating little piece. We are already almost 3 hours into this, so we haven't talked about Hitler.
Oh my goodness. Well, we kind of have.
We kind of did.
We kind of have, but let me just, do you want to lay out your argument about Hitler, and then I'll respond to it? And
I don't know if I do want to. I mean, I think, I actually think that I should stop, because I'm kind of at the limits of, I'm at the point where the probability that I will say something stupid is starting to increase, and I would rather not, because just saying the things that I'm trying to say that aren't stupid is dangerous enough.
Yes, this isn't the topic where you want to make that kind of error.
Yes.
Right,
So I would say maybe.
Boy, is there a more charged subject?
It's funny that it's charged, because as you point out, we're pretty much all in agreement about it, right? I mean, you know.
I mean, you find someone who's not, and they're instantly ostracized from society.
Right.
I mean, anybody who has an argument about Genghis Khan, I mean, there's a really fascinating take on this by Dan Carlin from Hardcore History, where he's talking about the amount of time that has passed since a horrible atrocity, and that there are people that will argue that Genghis Khan, who killed 10% of the world's population, changed things so badly that it literally lowered the carbon footprint of the human race while he was alive, killed some untold number of millions of people, and was responsible for their deaths. People look to him and they find all sorts of positive things to attribute to his reign. Opening up trade with China, opening up trade routes, all these different things that people have attributed to him, and that someday someone may do the same thing about Adolf Hitler. Right now, that is impossible.
He certainly made that job very difficult with all of the documentation, and especially the films. But
to attribute to his reign, opening up trade with China, opening up trade routes, all these different things that people have attributed to him, and that someday someone may do the same thing about Adolf Hitler. Right now, that is impossible.
He
opening up trade with China, opening up trade routes, all these different things that people have attributed to him, and that someday someone may do the same thing about Adolf Hitler. Right now, that is impossible.
He certainly made that job very difficult with all of the documentation, and especially the films. But let's just say the argument that I want to level, and I want to be really careful to do this so that it can't be misinterpreted by anybody.
I'm gonna enjoy watching this.
All right. Okay. If I'm cornered, will you
we'll
come
out?
No way, man. The knives are going out.
Oh no. Okay. So my argument from all those years ago in my paper that I did for Bob Trivers that I mentioned at the beginning was that Hitler was a monster, as we all know, but he was a rational monster. That the program that he deployed was not what he said, mind you. What he said was wrong in many places, especially where it gets near Darwinism. It's just all tangled and broken. But what he did was rational from the point of view of increasing the amount of resource that was dedicated to producing members of his population. And so my point is, this is the danger that we are in if we allow ourselves to imagine that genocidal impulses are more or less gone from the world because we've all assumed, or we've all agreed that they're a bad thing. And the point is that they exist in a latent program, and at a point when you have austerity as a result of usually an opportunity that has run its course and has resulted in the population growing to fill that opportunity, and suddenly there's nowhere to go because the opportunity has all been absorbed, the tendency of people is to figure out what other population is weak. And if that population is across a border, then there's some excuse for war, and if the population is within the border, then it's a genocide. But the point is that is an ever-present danger for us.
Okay, I want to clarify one thing. I mean, because this argument was sort of phrased as we have a disagreement about Hitler. And I would like to point out that I don't actually disagree with anything that you just said. Because if I remain relatively silent, I don't want to be seen, I don't want it to be seen that the fact that I'm disagreeing with you means, or that there is a disagreement means that it's a disagreement about any of that. I think the disagreement was something like, I said that Hitler was even more evil than we thought he was. And you, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're pointing out the danger of assuming that you can put Hitler in he was just a monster box and don't think about it anymore. And I would say, I agree absolutely with that. I mean, I've studied Hitler a lot, and there's a bunch of things that you can't say about him. You can't say he was stupid.
Right.
You can't say he was without artistic talent. You can't say that he was a poor organizer. You can't say that he wasn't charismatic. You can't say that he did wonders for Germany's economy in the first part of his reign. And so it's very necessary when if you're dealing intelligently with a true monster that you give the devil his due.
Yeah, so I think the thing that I saw in your video was, your argument was that as he was losing, instead of putting the genocide on pause and
winning the war,
that he ratcheted up the genocide.
Yeah, I don't know if it would really be, I don't think it's necessarily fair to say that it was him that did that, although I think he had a hand in it. It does appear to me that that's what happened.
Right, and my point would simply be, and again, I couldn't possibly be less sympathetic with the individual. My point is simply that from an evolutionary point of view, if your objective is coldly to increase the number of genomes that are spelled the same way that yours are on Earth, that A, he did enslave those Jews who were most fit to work in service of the German war machine, right? That's what those camps are. Not all of the camps were work camps, but Auschwitz, for example, was both a work camp and a death camp. And so there was this tendency to enslave. And
so let me ask you a question about this, because I think you have to make a pretty tenuous biological argument to say that there's evolutionary utility in increasing the number of your kinsmen, but unless they're very close. But here's a slight variation of that. You tell me what you think about this. Is it reasonable to presume that a decent survival strategy is to homogenize your environment with regards to, under some conditions, to homogenize your environment with regards to racial or ethnic differences, to decrease the probability that you and yours are going to be killed?
Oh, yeah.
This, because, I think
not all of the camps were work camps, but Auschwitz, for example, was both a work camp and a death camp, and so there was this tendency to enslave. And
so let me ask you a question about this, because I think you have to make a pretty tenuous biological argument to say that there's evolutionary utility in increasing the number of your kinsmen, but unless they're very close. But here's a slight variation of that. You tell me what you think about this. Is it reasonable to presume that a decent survival strategy is to homogenize your environment with regards to, under some conditions, to homogenize your environment with regards to racial or ethnic differences, to decrease the probability that you and yours are going to be killed?
Oh, yeah. Again, no defense of this,
Yes.
but you are right that to
Okay.
the extent that there's another population that's distinct, that population, even if it is small and has little power now, might not be small and have little power later. And so undoubtedly that program is there too.
Okay.
But I would say that the tendency to believe another population that's distinct, that
Recognize your environment with regards to racial or ethnic differences to decrease the probability that you and yours are going to be killed.
Oh, yeah, again, no defense of this,
Yes.
but you are right that to
Okay.
the extent that there's another population that's distinct, that population, even if it is small and has little power now, might not be small and have little power later. And so undoubtedly that program is there too.
Okay.
But I would say that the tendency to believe that evolution only functions at the level of kin when you're talking about very close relatives, I believe is an error that is the result of the fact that evolutionists early on wished to operationalize fitness. And it's very hard to operationalize fitness across population level differences. And so they built a definition that is about immediate kin, but there's no logical reason to imagine that peters out at the edge. So all I'm arguing is that what Hitler did was go after a population inside his border that was more distantly related to the people who were his constituents, and then he went obviously after Eastern Europe and sought the future of Germany in Russia, and it took 12 million Russians to turn around the German war machine. I mean, those are military deaths. There were vastly more. His border that was more distantly related to the people who were his constituents, and then he went obviously after Eastern Europe and sought the future of Germany in Russia, and it took 12 million Russians to turn around the German war machine. I mean, those are military deaths. There were vastly more civilian deaths, but the point is, he did not succeed in doing what he set out to do, but he also didn't fail in the sense that he took a bunch of resources that belonged to a population that was more distantly related, and he got rid of those people. And by getting rid of them, increased the amount of resource that was available to Aryans. This has nothing to do, genes are not interested in figuring out which genes are superior. All of the language about German superiority is nonsense. However, genes are very interested. I mean, they're obviously genes, they don't think, but they act as if they are interested in replacing alternative spellings.
Okay, so part of the reason that you're walking through this, just so that the track of this remains self-evident, is to caution people against, to alert people to the fact that the sorts of programs that Hitler both ran and elicited from people are lurking in our, let's say, in our genome, in our set of biological possibilities, and we have to be very awake to that fact on an ongoing basis.
They are lurking in our genomes, which does not mean that we as adults have this as a possibility. Many people will not go along with this. Other people have it lurking to be triggered. And I think, what worries me is that Trump, I think very cynically, utilized this lurking program in order to gain office. That he played upon the fact that certain people were waiting to hear those noises. And what he said about Charlottesville, again, he did not go after the white nationalists the way
Did you see the white nationalist response? Did you see?
No.
The Daily Storm had. Is that what it's called? One of the white nationalist papers had a breakdown of what Trump did, and that essentially at the end they were saying he didn't go after us, he didn't target us, this was very good. He was very clear that it was all sides, and that he never once targeted us, he didn't say anything bad about us.
See,
and they said, God bless Trump at the end of it.
There's a real tricky issue there about truth, because because my free speech, the free speech panel that I was a part of was, I had to make comments in the Canadian media about Charlottesville. And so I really had to think about what Trump said, because the fact that there is reprehensible behavior on both sides of the extremes of the distribution is true. What Trump said, because the fact that there is reprehensible behavior on both sides of the extremes of the distribution is true. However, truth is a tricky thing, because you have to take the temporal context into account. You know, because I would say, you can imagine that there are white lies and black truths. A black truth is when you use the truth in a way that isn't truthful, just like a white lie is when you use, when you lie in a way that isn't harmful. You can use the truth to wound and hurt, and what that really means is that you've misused the truth, and so it's actually a complex form of lie. But what Trump did wrong, this is independent of whether or not he was actually engaging in manipulation or deceit, was he failed to specify the time and the place for the utterance, because what he should have come out and done was said, I unequivocally denounce the white supremacist racism that emerged in Charlottesville.
Yes.
And then he should have shut up. And then 2 weeks later, he could have said, well, when we look at the political landscape as a whole, perhaps commenting on Berkeley, he could have said, it's pretty obvious that there are reprehensible individuals acting out at both ends of the extreme, but the Charlottesville week wasn't the week to make that point. So, and you know, why he did that? Well, it could be just ineptness, because it was a very tricky week to exactly get things right.
I don't think so. I think actually we can look at the what he did during the election, and I think we should expect that he would do exactly what he did.
Well, fair enough.
But
I think there's
a wink and a nod to them always. With neo-Nazis and white supremacists applaud Donald Trump's response to Dale. Yeah. See if you can see the actual. Does it show the actual text of what they wrote? Because
quote from the editor here, right there.
I refused to even mention anything to do with us. Reporters were screaming at him in the white nationalism. He just walked out of the room. Huh.
right.
There was an actual article that they wrote on one of those websites. Trump's comments were good. He didn't attack. That's it. He didn't attack us. Just said the nation should come together. Nothing specific against us. He said that we need to study why people get so angry, and implied that there was hate on both sides! Exclamation point. So he implied that the Antifa are haters. I mean, so that energized them in a way, and I mean, there's no secret that they support him. You know, my friend Alonzo Bowden has a very funny quote. He's a comedian. He goes, "Not all Trump supporters are racist, but all racists are Trump supporters."
Right.
And it's a great quote, and there's political power in that. Whether or not Trump is a racist, or whether it's the wink and the nod to that side, that is the only wink and the nod that they're getting. I mean,
or even insufficient denunciation,
yes.
which was kind of what did. There's a Canadian journalist named Faith Goldie who got fired from Rebel Media for being accused of being too cozy with Daily Stormer type. She did a podcast with crypto, and I listened to the podcast very carefully. She was actually one of the people that was supposed to be a panelist on this free speech talk, so that put us in a real bind. But
what happened in the podcast?
Well, what happened was, in my estimation, was that she didn't properly fulfill her role as critical journalist. It was sort of like a discussion with your friendly neighborhood neo-Nazi. And what I mean by that is she didn't ally herself with any of the purported aims of the neo-Nazi people she was talking to, but I think she failed to criticize them sufficiently. She didn't ask the tough questions, you know. Now, and that was it was a fatal error. I mean, she got fired from Rebel Media, and it's going to have terrible repercussions for her. Although she may land on her feet, but
Rebel Media is very conservative as well, right?
And certainly by Canadian standards. Yeah, that's right. No, Rebel Media imploded in the aftermath of Charlottesville because of what Faith Goldie did with the Daily. It wasn't even the Daily Stormer. It was a group called Crypto, but they're associated with the Daily Stormer. So she went on there, which I think you could make a case that that's okay as a journalist. You can go talk to neo-Nazis, but the question is, how do you talk to them? And the answer to that is, you point out their agenda. You don't allow them to masquerade as friendly as friendly, innocent people. You can't do that. And so I would say she damned herself by insufficiently criticizing the villains. It was something like that.
You familiar? I'm sure you are familiar with Louis Theroux.
No, I'm not.
Louis
Actually.
Theroux, the documentarian, do you know, from England? Fascinating guy, fantastic, like one of the best. And one of the things that he's done is, well, he's interviewed a ton of different people, but one of the great ones that he did was the Westboro Baptist Church, and he sort of embedded himself with them and was very congenial and very like kind and unthreatening, and stayed with them for long periods of time, like weeks on end, and got them to eventually like expose who they were and understand from like the point of view of an insider in a sense, without necessarily condemning them, but with just constantly asking questions, but being very, very polite about it. Not like a bunch, not like a lot of serious like confrontational criticism, rather, but a very friendly, sort of polite British way of discussing things. And he's particularly good at embedding himself. He did it with Scientology. He's done it with a bunch of different groups. He embeds himself and just sort of...
Right, so there's a justification for
Yes.
attempting that sort of thing, clearly.
Yes.
But and I really had to think this through, because, well, what happened with our talk was, it was so Hall of Mirrors-like. It was like, there was a talk about free speech talks being shut down on campus that was shut down by a campus.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a panel of people who purport to support free speech who knocked someone off the panel because of something, well, not precisely that she said, but it's close enough to make
Right.
the irony rather palpable.
It is.
So I had to go through what happened with Faith very carefully to figure out what the right ethical pathway was, you know. But I listened to the podcast very carefully. I listened to it with my son, and we talked about it a lot. And our conclusion was that she didn't ask enough tough questions. One would have done it, even maybe. Two would have done it for sure. But it was the discussion was too cordial. And it could have even been cordial, to your point, because maybe that would have led to more discussions.
Yeah.
But it should have been cordial with one snake bite. You know, that would have
But
been
is she
enough.
required to make that snake bite? I mean,
Well, it depends on what you mean by required.
Well, but my thought is like to find out what these people really want and really like we're really trying to achieve. Sometimes you don't have to be confrontational with them. You just got to allow them to be comfortable.
Look,
and Kamau Bell did that really great
Yeah.
on his CNN show with the KKK. He sort of just allowed them to be themselves, and they became more and more comfortable with him the more time they spent with him, to the point where they're actually joking around with him. But you got to see that the ugliness was so obvious and evident. And without him confronting them on it, without him yelling and arguing, you got to see it from him just being friendly and joking around with them. Now, nobody would ever accuse a black man like Kamau Bell with being a sympathizer with the KKK. He was in this inarguable position. Like, no one could accuse him of it. This woman, I'm assuming, is white. That's where the problem lies.
Well, one of
If she
many
was-
problems.
Yeah,
but
if she was a black woman in the very same situation, like Oprah was in the past, like Oprah interviewed the KKK in the past, and she was never accused of being like somehow or another a sympathetic person to them.
Right, and somehow we have to raise the threshold of offense. There are lots of ways to contribute to the conversation. One of them may be to
Excuse me.
embed yourself and actually
Sorry about that.
allow the world to see, raise the threshold of offense. There are lots of ways to contribute to the conversation. One of them may be to embed yourself and actually allow the world to see
Yes.
people who are doing something abhorrent in the way that they see themselves, so
Yeah.
you can understand it rather
Just
than
being there asking questions.
right.
You don't necessarily have to be. What are you going to change them? I
Well-
mean, being critical to them. I mean, just getting in arguments with them. I mean,
But
you
this
might be
brings
able to
us-
see something from that, from their response to like rational discussion about their issues.
This brings us down a whole other rabbit hole, which maybe we could talk about at some point in the future, because this is a really interesting topic. You know, like part of the reason that I've been accused of being on the far right, say, or on the alt-right, is because I've talked with people who perhaps are closer, what would you say, have an association network that might be more closely allied with that than people are comfortable with. But my attitude has been too, and I don't want to talk about this in much detail because it's really complicated, but the anti-left spectrum, let's say, is very confused, and it could easily tilt very rapidly into the hard right anti-left, which is the danger that you were describing. Complicated, but the anti-left, what would you say, have an association network that might be more closely allied with that than people are comfortable with. But my attitude has been too, it's an interesting topic, you know, like part of the reason that I've been accused of being on the far right, say, or on the alt-right, is because I've talked with people who perhaps are closer, what would you say, have an association network that might be more closely allied with that than people are comfortable with. But my attitude has been too, and I don't want to talk about this in much detail because it's really complicated, but the anti-left spectrum, let's say, is very confused, and it could easily tilt very rapidly into the hard right anti-left, which is the danger that you were describing. And partly what I'm hoping is that I can talk to people who might conceivably be on that developmental pathway because they're tired of being accused of implicit racism, let's say, and say, look, you can be anti-radical left without falling all the way into the far right, and here's how you might do it. But that means I have to talk to them, and then if I talk to them, that means I risk association with them, and that risks being tainted. It's a very tricky line to walk.
Well, it's also one of the big problems with this hard stance of the left, of the hard left, like this Pepe the Frog thing. Like that anybody, I mean, one of the things that I tweeted was some guy that called me, you just admitted you're a Nazi because I posted a meme that someone had created of me as Pepe the Frog. And apparently there's Pepe the Frog of everybody. And so this guy was like, well, you just admitted you're a Nazi. And I'm like, see, this is a part of the problem. And this creates a massive blowback. People are getting angry because that frog, for the most part, is used humorously. And
yeah, actually, you used the phrase defensive humor when we were talking. And it really is. And I think, I mean, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Joe, but
no, please do.
There's something about the idea that the effectiveness of this meme is that it tangles people with no sense of humor in knots.
And that's a huge part of why those things are generated.
That's why they like it.
That's exactly right.
They love it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm fearing that I'm saying something about this frog and that there's going to be something that's going to emerge that I should know about, that somehow I'm admitting something. But all I'm saying is what I see is a lot of people using it to taunt people who can't figure out.
I think that's the vast majority of it. I do believe that. And I think the same thing about the Kekistani types is that that's almost all humor.
Yeah, and there's a massive problem with pushing back against that and calling those people Nazis and racists, and especially when they're just using humor, and especially when it's very clear if you look at all the memes online, and I went thoroughly through Google to find them. There are some abhorrent ones. There are some horrible ones. There are some ones that are with Nazi uniforms. There's some anti-Jew ones. There's some horrific ones. Most of them are not that. Most of them. The vast majority of them are humorous. And again, these people are not coordinating. So if one person decides to make a Mickey Mouse racist meme, which, by the way, a lot of the early Mickey Mouse cartoons, you could just take a screenshot, and they're fucking tremendously racist.
Right.
Because dealing with the sign of the times. I mean, images of black people that were extremely cartoonish. You know, giant lips, black faces, the whole deal. Horribly racist. You could say Mickey Mouse is fucking racist. Don't go to Disneyland. No one's saying that, right? But they could. And this is the slippery slope. You start with the frog, you know? And, you know, first they came for Pepe, and I didn't say anything.
Yeah, well, if the frog is racist, you start wondering what isn't racist.
Exactly.
Because it's a bloody
racist.
Cartoon frog.
Well, you can make a cartoon about everything that has ever existed and make that racist. It doesn't mean that the frog is racist. This is where it's crazy. It's like, what percentage of people are making the frog racist? And then for the Southern Poverty Law Center to say that this is a symbol of hate now, this frog, well, guess what? You just back these fucking people up against the wall and you shored their offenses because now they're realizing, oh, well, these people are mad. They're not just mad like angry, but mad, like insane. Like, you're not looking at this thing rationally at all. You're saying that a frog, where 99% of the memes are just humorous or silly, now the frog is a hate symbol.
Not only a hate symbol, but Nazi. White supremacist. I mean, they're just drying up all of the space between their preposterous perspective and the nightmare at the other end of the spectrum. And the point is, almost all of us live in that intermediate space.
Yes.
So yeah, it's
almost all thoughts live in that intermediate space.
Right.
And there's a variability of all thoughts. You know, there's flexibility of all ideas. And when you're talking about something where it's extremely humorous, you're talking about a humorous frog. I mean, goddamn, to call that all hate when sometimes it's hate. And by who? By whoever the fucking people are that did that hateful thing. Those are the people that are hateful, not the other ones that are using that frog for humor. I mean, this is the fact that this is an argument at all just shows how lost we are in these ideological arguments, this left versus right, extreme end of the spectrum, on one end of the field throwing rocks at the far end of the field.
Yeah, it's
most of us are in the middle somewhere.
It's hopeless if we cannot have discussions
about a frog.
Yeah, about a cartoon frog.
A cartoon frog.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus Christ.
Well, that's
so
weird.
That's
a nice conclusion.
Yeah, it might be. It might be. Listen, this was a lot of fun. It always is.
Great.
And I'm glad you guys came up with this idea, and I'm glad we had the time to do it.
Yeah, me too, man. Thanks for the invitation. Yeah, my
pleasure.
really good to meet you.
Jordan Peterson, what is your Twitter handle again?
Jordan B. Peterson. Yeah.
And Brett Weinstein.
Brett Weinstein on Twitter.
Weinstein, I've been saying Weinstein.
It doesn't matter. You're not
Is it interchangeable?
Sorry. Sorta.
All right. But thank you guys. Really appreciate it. A lot of fun.
Yep. Good to see you again.
Bye, everybody.
Jesus Christ.
Alright, well, I know it's been a little bit weird, maybe, to hang out and listen to me eat and listen to me play games or whatever. But if you did come back later and take the time and enjoy any part, I thank you, and I hope you'll tune in again soon. But in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. And good luck, and sweetest dreaming whether wake or sleep. Nighty-night.